All right, we are back. Hey, everybody, we are back. It's Everyday Junglist. I'm here with Charles Bogenberger. Sorry about that. We had a phone die on us, on his end. So we are back live again. And Charles, keep going. We could keep going with your tour of the laboratory here.
Yeah, so that as I was saying, the final stage I was showing you in the other room, we do all of our harvesting and packaging in a positive pressure tent. So it's really easy for because that space is so small for us to keep everything sanitary,
All right.
which is really important. I mentioned this in our last interview, but
Yeah.
psychedelic mushrooms are something that just inherently make people sick to their stomach. There's a lot of gastrointestinal distress that's caused from a mushroom trip. And that's for two reasons. One is that the psilocybin itself just causes a large release of serotonin, and you have a lot of serotonin receptors in your digestive system.
Oh, I
So
see. I
that's
did not know
one of
that.
the reasons why it causes distress. But the other thing is there's a compound in there called chitin, which you might have heard of because that's what insect shells are made of.
Yeah.
Um, but our body doesn't have the enzymes needed to be able to digest that. And so a lot of times the chitin in the mushrooms can cause you to feel a little bit sick to your stomach. But why that keeps me up at night is because if somebody were to get slightly ill during a mushroom administration session,
Right.
they would complain to their facilitator to be like, I don't feel so good. And they'd say, oh, that's natural. It's normal for somebody to have gastrointestinal distress as a result of a mushroom trip. And then they
Right.
would go home, and 24 hours later, they would still be feeling sick. And it'd be the case that they had actually got food poisoning from the mushrooms and they had
Yeah.
just been ignoring it for those 24 hours because they thought it was natural. So I'm
Yeah.
really worried about that, which means that I'm probably overly paranoid about making sure that the mushrooms are harvested and packaged in a food safe environment. But
Yeah.
that's obviously a
I
top
don't. I don't
priority.
think that. Obviously, I don't think that. Being a food safety guy and coming out of that world, obviously, I don't think that. I'm really happy with the way you're doing things. And we've talked about this a million times on a professional level and a personal level.
Yeah.
That in my opinion, this is for the industry. It's already you're already on the edge of something that's illegal federally. The last thing you need is some sort of an outbreak, and you have a bunch of people get sick or potentially even die or get really really sick, and it's a food safety issue. And then you guys are basically done, in my opinion. I mean, it's gonna end it real quick because people are gonna get really upset. And so I think you guys, it behooves the industry to do everything it can to do things safely. And I really like what you've done. And I think Colorado actually has done a good job, at least with the requirements, the testing requirements, the best they could in an industry like this that's new to try to make things safe. And I think inherently it's a pretty safe, fairly safe to consume, especially in the way it's being consumed, which is in a pharmaceutical format, where
Yeah.
it's highly controlled. Out there in the world, if you're picking mushrooms out of some new cow dung or whatever off the farm, they're not maybe not quite as safe. But yeah, I do like what they're doing, and I do think the risk is relatively low, and I appreciate the fact that it does keep you up at night because of that. I think
Yeah.
I wish more people would think about it like that. But in any case, I'll get off my soapbox on the food safety thing.
You and I are on the same page there, Dan.
That's good. That's good. All
So
right,
yeah,
so
it's a
that's
relatively small
yeah.
thing.
So let me ask you about the pack. Yeah, let me ask you that. That's the last step. So you've grown the mushrooms now. You dehydrate them. Now, how do you deliver them into a format that the therapist, like, how do you get them to the therapist? Like, what is the format? Is it a capsule? I mean, what does it look like?
Yeah, so we actually have both the cultivation and the manufacturing license.
Okay.
And what that means is the cultivation license allows you to actually grow the mushrooms and package them and sell them. And then the manufacturing license allows us to turn them into other products. Right now,
Okay.
that scope is fairly limited. So in Colorado, you can make tea bags, you can make capsules,
Okay.
and then you can also extract them. I believe the regulations currently allow you to extract them into something that like a gelatinous gummy that
Okay.
you
So
can
you could do a
serve that
gummy,
way.
but no
Um,
like chocolates or other kind of foods. So just
yeah,
gummies and capsules.
not yet anyway. I think the regulators are open to other administration matrices, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
but they've been relatively conservative on all of these fronts, just because they want
Yeah.
the idea. And
Makes
I
sense.
remember somebody was speaking on one of the listening sessions, and they said, "This is natural medicine. We do not need to be." It doesn't need to be chocolates. It doesn't need to be canned. People have
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
understanding that medicine doesn't taste good. Like,
Yeah, that's
we should
a
be
very good
focused
point.
on that.
A very good point. And anyways, it behooves you to keep it to make it medicine-y as you can, I guess. And I can understand.
Yeah.
I can see that point. So it's
So
not that
look,
trivial to make a capsule, a pharmaceutical capsule requires some machinery and different things. I mean, so you have all that equipment to do that.
We actually, the city of Denver for this specific office does not allow us to make capsules. That's considered heavy manufacturing.
Okay,
So we are not allowed to make capsules here, but we do have our manufacturing license, which allows us to grind up the mushrooms into a powder and make it
okay.
into a tea bag. Food
Make those tea bags.
manufacturing is allowable by the city of Denver, but pharmaceutical manufacturing, we would need a different location if we wanted to
Okay.
do that.
So you're doing the tea format, and I guess
Yes.
so. Then in a therapy session, you would be sipping tea with your therapist, I guess, at the beginning, at the beginning
Mhm.
to start the session, as opposed to take to popping a capsule. Interesting.
Yeah,
Do you have flavors
and
to the
there's
teas? Are the teas flavored? I mean, do you make different flavors and things, or what is your?
yeah. So we
All
we can't our tea has to be 100% mushrooms. We're not allowed to
right,
put anything else in there.
all right.
But what we can do is we can make recommendations for different flavored teas that you would serve alongside it.
I
And
see.
and for those that are, not familiar with or as familiar with psychedelic mushrooms, the tea is a very gentle way of receiving psilocybin.
Okay,
So it does a lot of the conversion of psilocybin to psilocin, which psilocin is the active compound, and psilocybin is just the stable compound that the mushroom produces that our bodies convert to psilocin. So by putting it into a tea, you're actually doing that conversion in the teacup or in the teapot. And so when you take it, it hits you a little bit quicker. It's a little bit smoother of your ramp up into the journey, and hopefully gives you an experience that is a little bit easier on your stomach than the
I was gonna
traditional
say that. So
movement.
I was gonna ask you that question next. So yeah, so it's less harsh on the stomach, so
Yeah.
theoretically, I guess. Okay, interesting. Hmm. Okay,
And it's
and s
still a water-based extraction. You're not using like acids or other compounds.
all right,
So
yeah.
it's very natural to take psilocybin that way.
Is it
Um,
hot tea or cold tea? So you can't do it too hot. I would assume. I guess it's heat sensitive, or I don't know.
yeah, you're supposed to use slightly less than boiling water. Um, you don't need a full boil to extract the molecules from the mushrooms. It does a
Okay,
pretty good the water does a pretty good job of,
all right.
um,
So
extracting that on its
so on
own.
the dosing. So this is my next question on the dosing. Then how do you know how much to put into a tea bag? How much does each individual person might need or want to take, or how does the therapist decide that?
Yeah. So we recommend with our recipe, so it starts with 3 grams of mushroom powder, and you
Okay,
would so that's what's in the tea bag, and you would steep that into a pot with 3 cups of water. Um,
okay,
and what that allows you to do is kind of control your own dosage. So if you steep that into 3 cups of water, and after you drink the first cup, if you probably want to let that sit for a while before you start sipping on the second cup. And only in unusual circumstance would I recommend that you drink the third cup, just because that would give you a very heavy and long-lasting trip. Like 3 cups of
okay,
mushroom tea would put most people, even with high tolerances, into that heroic dose category.
right,
But 2 cups should be more than enough for most people that are
okay.
consuming it.
And as I say, is there a lot of I guess maybe you don't know the answer to this, but is there a lot of variability in the effects between person to person? I would imagine many people going to
Yes.
these therapy centers. I don't know how much experience they may or may not have with psychedelics. Some of them perhaps none. I mean, I guess the therapist. That's where the therapist has to understand that and kind of work around that.
Exactly. That's the facilitator's job to work with them
Yeah,
and understand what their requirements are. From the facilitators I've talked to, and keep in mind, this is all very new in Colorado,
yeah, of course,
right?
yeah, of course.
We're talking less than 100 patients have been seen year to date inside of the legal framework. So,
Huh?
uh, I'm the facilitators that I've been talking to so far. Some of them talk about receiving patients who are psychedelically naive, as we call it,
Yeah, right.
which is this is their first journey. They haven't had any prior experience with other psychedelics like LSD or MDMA. This is really their first foray into the psychedelic space, and so they
Huh?
wanted to do that under the supervision of a licensed facilitator.
Interesting. So,
So
and so there
there's
have
been a
been some.
lot of
There have
those
been some
coming
of those.
through.
So there have definitely been some of those types of people, and that's
Yes,
not I guess not too surprising to me. That's quite
I,
interesting. But only a
I
hundred.
would
That's a
say
very
I'd
low
put
number.
it at about half and half right now of
Oh,
people
really?
who are
Okay.
experienced with psychedelic medicine, and then people that
Okay.
are brand new to it.
And speaking of the other psychedelics, they're not part of this framework, as I understand. It's only mushrooms. I'm not 100% clear on what else is included under this umbrella of the legalization or the regulatory framework.
Yes. So the natural medicine term was meant to be more holistic, or sorry, more inclusive than just psychedelic mushrooms.
Okay.
So when they passed this regulation, it immediately decriminalized a lot of what they considered to be natural medicine.
Okay.
So inside of the regulatory framework, we're starting with psychedelic mushrooms.
I see. I see.
But from here, we're going to make expansions, and there have already been relatively um, enthusiastic efforts from the state legislature and from the natural medicine division to start considering some of the other natural medicines that are out there.
But
Um,
no one else is producing those yet. Everyone that's doing this is doing mushrooms. Is that correct?
Correct. Um,
Okay.
they are still in the planning phases for the other medicines that they would like to include. So the big one that gets all the press is ibogaine.
I'm
Um,
again. Okay.
yeah. So this comes from the iboga plant that is grown over in Gabon. Um,
Okay.
and so the challenge for Colorado is we don't have any iboga plants that are native to our state. So
Yeah.
the debate that the natural medicine division is going through right now and trying to figure out how to make ibogaine part of this program is what is the most ethical way to procure this medicine from
Yeah. Yeah.
from another country and administer it here, and what effect is that going to have on the economy of that country to be
And if
able
you
to
grow,
do.
and I guess you can't grow it. Won't grow in Colorado. You can't grow it in greenhouses, or it's. I don't know.
It wouldn't be impossible, but I believe a mature iboga plant takes about 25 years, so
Wow.
it
Okay.
wouldn't be ready
Okay.
anytime in the
For a
near.
while. Interesting. And what about MDMA? You also hear a lot about that in the therapy world as being useful. And is anybody looking at that?
Not as part of the Natural Medicine Health Act. So
Okay.
MDMA gets a lot of enthusiasm from people that are operating in the underground space, and
Yeah.
has definitely made some progress towards like clinical trials with the
Yeah.
FDA.
Right.
MDMA also has the advantage that it's not a Schedule One substance right now. So they have more work that they can do. There's some understood medical benefit to
Yeah.
MDMA as
Yeah.
a substance, so it's
But it
Schedule
doesn't
One.
fall. But it doesn't fall under this framework because it's not natural. Because it's a chemical. It's chemically synthesized.
Correct. So when we're
Oh,
talking about natural medicines, we're talking about psilocybin, we're talking about DMT, and we're talking about
okay.
ibogaine.
And where does DMT come from? And where does that fit into this? Is
It
anyone
comes
looking at
from
that?
like there's a lot of things that have DMT in it, but where people usually go is to like there's a specific tree that you
Okay.
can extract it from the bark. But to my knowledge, there isn't any way to consume DMT that doesn't require an extraction process.
Okay.
It's not like
So
mushrooms where you can just eat
we just grow
mushrooms.
it and go. Yeah, I understand. I got you. So you have to do some sort of chemical process on it, but it's still considered a natural medicine under this framework, according to correct. Okay, so someone could do that. Oh, interesting. Hmm, cool. And so, can I ask you how much you're charging for your 3 gram for your 3 gram? What do you can you share what you anticipated charge or price point will be?
Yeah. So I personally, I am a little bit offended by what the market prices are for natural medicine at the
Yeah, what
moment.
are they? What are they? That's
I
very. I'm
mean,
curious.
people are paying like $200 for what is effectively a single dose of natural medicine.
Wow. Well,
Um,
that's
so like
yeah.
this would be a package that has like 25 milligrams of psilocybin in it,
Wow,
and
200. Okay, so that's medical prices. That's prescription medication prices, basically.
yeah, and I think being first to market,
Right.
the
Yeah.
cultivators that got their licenses right away and suffered through the pain of,
Yeah. Of
being
course.
licensed but not having a testing lab with where to say
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
where you can send your samples. Because
Yeah.
I think some of the cultivators started getting licensed in March, but we didn't have a testing lab until the end of July. So
Uh,
they
and is there
they
just
were
one
just
testing lab now? Is there one lab? Or you guys have multiple labs licensed?
yeah, there's one lab,
Just one. Okay.
in Colorado, which on on the one hand is unfortunate because, the pricing for their testing is
Yeah.
very high, and
Of course. Yeah.
there's really no they can charge
Alternative.
whatever they want because, they're the only testing lab. On the
Yeah.
other hand, I've seen what's happened in the cannabis space
Yeah.
where, cannabis businesses can shop around for the lab that they wanted, and that has led to some very unrealistic potency testing results that they get. Um,
Welcome to the world of food safety testing. Yeah,
yeah.
as you
So
know very well.
So I kind of like that there's only one testing lab because it does
Yeah.
make for a very level playing field,
And they're
and it
experts then,
can,
obviously, and they become experts at it because they're doing it. They know they're used to the sample type and that sort of thing.
yeah.
So,
And I mean, if I'm angry about a test result as a cultivator, they can tell me to go take a hike because
all right, too bad.
there's
We're the only
literally
game in
nowhere
town.
else for me to go.
Yeah, we're the only game in town, buddy. Good luck with that. Interesting. So, have you
Exactly.
had? Okay, I'm going to ask you on the political side, from the federal perspective, have you guys felt any pressure, or has the testing lab felt any pressure from the federal government, the FDA, or whoever, about this effort in any way?
No.
Interesting.
It's been fairly quiet from a federal law enforcement perspective. There, in terms of rhetoric, I mean, there has been a fair amount of rhetoric in the last year,
Yeah.
at the federal level, of people talking about the possibility of, descheduling, psilocybin and particularly ibogaine. Ibogaine's the one that's really popular amongst conservative voices out there.
Huh.
Rick
Why
Perry,
is
the
that? Yeah. Why is
former
that? You know
governor of
why?
Texas.
You know why that is?
If I had to speculate, I'd say that ibogaine has the luxury of being extremely powerful for helping people through addiction. So,
Huh.
uh, it's
Ah.
it's it's like
Huh.
the opposite of a gateway drug, right?
Right.
Ibogaine isn't going to make you psychedelically
Ah.
curious. You're going to do your ibogaine therapy and then immediately want to stop taking any of the
Anything
other
else you're
drugs
taking?
you have been
All
considering.
right. Huh.
Um,
I did not know that. I didn't realize that. So they're like, because obviously many of the conservatives have family members that are addicts or whatever, and they see this as a potential help for them.
Well, incredibly powerful for veterans dealing with complex,
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
PTSD and things like that. So that's
Huh.
one of the reasons, and the other reason is that nobody would ever take ibogaine recreationally,
Huh. Okay.
um,
And
as
why is
opposed
that?
to
And why is that? I mean, the
it makes you
experience is
really
just
sick.
not. Oh, it does make you really sick. Oh,
Yeah.
I see. I did not know that.
So the gastrointestinal distress that I described from psilocybin is much more intense from ibogaine. So that's
Ah.
one of the reasons why it's really appealing amongst conservative voices is that it
It punishes you
it's
at the same time. I
yeah,
see.
you
You're
do
doing
feel
wrong here. So,
like you're
right.
taking medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing something. You have to feel bad, of course, to do something fun potentially.
Yeah.
It's I understand. You have to pay the price up front. Yes, that is very interesting, Charles. I was not aware of that. That's really cool. Very interesting. But yeah,
I
so
think
so
the
the rhetoric you
really
have heard though, it's a positive rhetoric. It's not like we got to shut these people down. You know, the hippies are
yeah,
coming back and all this other stuff. And communism. Next thing you know, communism is going to take over the U.S. from druggies and all this kind of thing. We're not. I haven't heard that kind of rhetoric from the feds, at least.
it's a legitimate concern, and I certainly heard a lot of that feedback when I was trying to figure out which neighborhood to locate my business in, and I
Right.
was listening to city council meetings as
Uh,
concerned citizens were talking about how they didn't want drugs coming into their community and that. So,
yeah, which
uh,
yeah, I understand, and you get that. You have to understand that, of course. I mean, that makes you can understand where they're
yeah,
coming from. So
you do, but also this is not what people are
correct.
afraid of. Like,
Yeah,
everything that we're doing in Colorado is about the supervised use model. So you go to
yeah,
a specific place, you sit in a room with you and
yeah,
just the facilitator. It's not
yeah.
typically a social experience,
Right,
and
right.
then you go home to from the healing center from there. So it's not like
Yeah, yeah.
it's not like people are doing these drugs on the
You're
street.
going out to party. Yeah, you're not going out to party or doing it on the street. And it's yeah, it's totally as controlled as you can get. Actually, it's the safest way you can do any drug is in a
Yeah.
supervised environment of that sort. And the therapists have their own, I guess. And I still do want to do an interview with one of the therapists you connected me with, and I hopefully can do that to understand more about how they structure that, how they determine what is safe or isn't safe, and how they for individual patients. But that hopefully that'll be a future interview.
The other tricky thing, that I've observed as I've been talking to more facilitators is so a lot of the people that we have relationships with here at Mosaic Natural Medicine is are these facilitators that have been historically practicing in what they call the underground space. So
Right,
this was an unregulated market
right.
where, they might have 10 years of supervising people who were taking mushrooms for therapy. Um,
Okay.
and the way that these individuals would navigate this is it would usually be up to the patient to procure the medicine on their
I
own,
see. On their own. I
and then
see.
they would sit down with them and say, "I'm very experienced with people on mushrooms. I've sat with over over 100 people. So I know what
Wow.
to expect your reaction is going to be,
Huh.
but every medicine is different, every person is
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And even for some individuals, like I certainly have experienced this on my own mushroom journeys that everyone's a little bit different. Like
Yeah.
I can take mushrooms, twice in a month and have completely different experiences both times because they
Right.
have a slightly different message to give to you each time you take it.
And context dependent, of course, obviously, like any drug, I suppose.
Yeah.
Very much
So
context dependent.
for those folks who've been operating in the undergrad space, they have a semi-legal model, right? Because they're not trafficking in something that's federally illegal. Um, they're just providing the harm reduction services. So
Yeah.
they're sitting with people, making sure that they're safe while they go on their journey. But because they never are touching the medicine or trafficking the medicine,
Yeah.
that makes what they do somewhat of a gray area. And for those
Yeah.
folks that I've been talking to, they were very eager to get their licenses this year when they became available either here in Colorado or in Oregon. But a lot of the feedback that I've been given from them is that their patients are not necessarily eager to jump into the regulated framework.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it's more
Yeah.
expensive? It's more expensive.
And
Their insurance obviously is not gonna cover it no matter what, I guess, I would assume.
yeah.
Huh.
More expensive and less convenient. So
Yeah,
as
yeah,
as an example of this, say you're living well, you're living in Mexico, so that's a bad
yeah,
example. But
yeah.
say you were down in Southern California, right?
Right, right,
Um, Rather than paying the cost of flying out to Colorado, getting yourself a hotel room,
right, right,
your facilitator, also having it to rent the space where you do your journey,
right.
you can just fly your facilitator to your house in Southern California
Right, do the same
and
thing, right? And do it on
and
your
and
and
do
then
the
you can't
service
right,
there.
and so you can't send the medicines out of state. Obviously, this has to be completely kept within the state, and so your
Yeah.
market is really the people that live in Colorado.
Yeah, live
Interesting.
in Colorado or are willing to travel here for a
Yeah,
regulated journey.
right.
The other major benefit of the unregulated model for folks, in addition to being cheaper and slightly more convenient, is that there are people in Colorado that are talking about making sort of these beautiful, idyllic healing centers, but to my
Yeah.
knowledge, they don't exist yet.
Huh.
So when one of the facilitators that I work with tells this story about like the most natural way to heal from taking mushrooms would
Uh-huh.
be to start in the city, you hike into a forest where
Yeah.
you then get to travel from your environment that has all of the unhealthy things of modern life
Yeah, right,
and into a
right.
more natural state. And then you find mushrooms growing in it, under a tree in a natural setting. And so you've entered their habitat and then you're
Yeah,
really equipped to eat the mushrooms and listen to what they have to say. And so like that's what people dream of. Is like you go on a
yeah.
hike, you find some
Yeah,
mushrooms, you
the
take the
actual journey.
mushrooms,
Right, right, right.
you get the
Yeah,
journey. And
yeah.
that doesn't
Huh.
exist yet in Colorado. Nobody has built
Right.
the healing center where you can actually do your journey with a facilitator present in a natural setting.
Yeah.
Everything that exists today is generally inside of what looks very much like a traditional therapist office
All right, you're
or
going to a
or
therapist,
an
and that's not
advisor.
exactly the most conducive setting. Wouldn't think for something like that necessarily. So that's an interesting
Yeah.
point. Huh. All right. All right. Well, anyways, we got what, like 5 minutes or 10 minutes left. So I did want to. So since you did not actually take a test, you just told me to get your license. I have a test that I wanted to give you actually. Well, it's not for you because you had asked me about doing a presentation actually for around the microbiology of fungi, and I have been working on it actually, and I would really much like to give it. But one of the things I was going to do was a little kind of a quiz to see
Okay.
for the people in the audience to see what they know about actually about mushrooms or about fungi or about the microbiology of fungi. But so what I have here, I think I can see this. I'll turn this around. So I'm going to ask you the first question here. I don't know
Okay.
if you can see this.
I hope I do
If you
well.
see,
I didn't study.
yes, I do. Yeah. Well, you don't have to study, I don't think. So can you read that? Can you read that? So I'm asking you to arrange the following in order from the least hard to kill to the most hard to kill. Okay. And so for those who can't see it, A there is Steven Seagal as Mason Storm in the 1990 movie. It's the American vigilante action thriller Hard to Kill. The B is the tardigrade, which is the water bear. C is a bacterial spore. D is a fungal spore, and E is a Tyrannosaurus rex. So the challenge here is to arrange these in order from the least hard to kill to the most hard to kill. So if we
Okay.
go ahead. So what do you think is the least hard to kill out of that list there, Charles? If you had to guess.
The least hard to kill. Well, Tyrannosaurus Rex is not here anymore, so I'm going with T Rex.
You're overthinking it, Charles. The answer is Steven Seagal.
Oh, Steven Seagal. Oh,
He's
damn
ironic.
it.
It's very ironic. It's supposed to be ironic and funny at the same time because he's
Okay.
really a human being is actually not all that hard to kill.
Not
especially
all that
Steven
devastating.
Seagal, especially Steven Seagal. But humans in general are pretty easy to kill. Obviously, as we know, you could die for lots of different ways. You could be shot, beheading, chemical ways, all kinds of things, microbiology ways you can die. Tons of ways you can die, and actually heat is another way you can die, and it doesn't take much to do it. All right, so but you were close though, because the second answer is going to be the T-Rex actually.
The
So even though it
T-Rex.
was a dominant apex predator, which was huge, and it can be killed almost as easily as a human. Of course, now you need to up your game a little bit when it comes to the hardware you might use, like a grenade launcher, perhaps, or Gatling gun, or whatever. But they still can be killed, and they are actually slightly more heat tolerant than humans, but not by that much. Not that
I would
much more
not have
heat
guessed
tolerant.
that.
I would not have either. I actually found that was new information for me. It's because geologically the Earth was actually about 5 degrees warmer at the time they existed, so that's why they're slightly more heat tolerant, which I found interesting.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the answer to the third one. Actually, these next two are actually kind of interchangeable. The tardigrade, which perhaps are you familiar with the tardigrade, the water bear?
I did not know the tardigrade.
The tardigrade is a very unusual organism, and it can exist in what they call a ton state, where it basically goes into hibernation mode, and it can survive freezing, dehydration, radiation, and it can survive in space, the vacuum of space. So it's basically it dehydrates itself, and it goes into a state of suspended animation, and so its metabolism slows. But it still can be killed by high temperatures, so it takes about 180 degrees Fahrenheit, and it also being shot from a gun apparently can kill it. Now I don't know who did that experiment to show a water bear can be killed by being shot from a gun, but apparently someone did that experiment, as I found out online. And so the fungal spore, though, is very close to that.
Yeah.
So they are actually, they are resistant to lots of things, environmental stresses and certain disinfectants. And they're definitely more resistant than vegetatively, growing cells, but they're not as tough, or not even nearly as tough as bacterial endospores, especially when you talk about chemical resistance. And their heat resistance, actually, of fungal spores is widely variable between 85 and 100 degrees C. And then, of course, the most hard to kill is the bacterial endospore. And they're one of the hardiest life forms on Earth. And they have this protective outer coat, and they can survive up to 150 C. That's really, really hot, and all kinds of chemicals, radiation, desiccation. And they're not really a resting stage. It's not like the tardigrade in that sense, but it's just a dormant state, and they can stay viable, of course, for decades, or even longer in
Are,
some cases.
are there? Do you have any idea of how long the fungal spores can live? I did get asked
It's a
that
great
question a
question.
little bit.
I don't know that. I will find that out for you, Charles. It's a great question. I will find that out because I don't know. I'm sure it varies a lot, but
Yeah.
anyways. All right. So next question. All other things being equal, what type of scientist would be expected to know the most about fungi and mushroom cultivation? A plant biologist, a chemist, a physicist, a biologist, or a botanist? And you sort of touched on this, I think, early in our interview about what type of scientist you might think might know the most about fungi and mushroom cultivation. What would you say?
Um. Yeah, I
Let's
would say
hear
so. Both the botanist and the plant biologist, I think, are decoys because the mushrooms are fungi, not plants. So,
it. Yep, yep.
I would say I would go with biologist over those two.
Good man. It's
Although
a good answer.
what I will say is that the people that run the psilocybin testing labs here in Colorado are
Yeah.
fantastic chemists. So
Are
they're
they?
they
Oh, I believe it. I believe it. Yeah.
but they also know a lot about cultivating mushrooms. So
Interesting.
don't
Interesting.
don't rule out the chemists when you're talking
I will
about
not. I will not.
yeah.
But I'm going to say biologist because I'm a biologist myself, so I'm somewhat because I'm also, of course, prejudiced, but for pro
Yeah.
biology. But if I say, and the reason is because what you said, the fungi are not plants. People think when they think about growing mushrooms, they think I'm going to be growing another plant, and so they take the same things they know about plants, sunlight, and all these different things that you apply when you grow plants, and they try to apply it to growing mushrooms. But mushrooms are actually genetically more closely related to animals than plants, and actually by a substantial amount. And the reason we know this is because of the work of this guy Carl Woese and 16S ribosomal RNA sequencing and the tree of life. And fungi are much older than both plants and animals, 500 million years older than plants. And they're also very different from bacteria. So many people often think, oh, fungi and bacteria are similar. Not at all similar, not even close.
Yeah,
They are
completely
eukaryotes,
different
unlike the
organisms.
bacteria, which are prokaryotes. So, but on the tree of life, animals and fungi are sister groups. So the animals and the fungi are what they call sister groups. They're closer together, whereas plants are way off, totally in their own thing, independent evolutionary lineage. So we are more closely related as people to the fungi and the mushrooms than the plants are. And that's sort of shown here. But,
Which,
all right.
not to get too woo woo with you, but that would explain why they have a way of talking with us. Is that
Yeah, that probably would. Why they could communicate with us, right? Exactly. So, but let's bonus question here. You probably don't know this. This is kind of a trickier one. But you look at that tree of life there, and you see something that's missing. If you're paying attention into the news today, and you think about the biological things that people are on people's minds, and you look at that tree of life, there's one thing on there that stands out that you don't see. And can you pick what that might be? Can you just think of what that might be? You see the bacteria, you see archaea there, you see the eukaryotes. What are we missing there?
Um, well, I can't see all that well, but
You probably can't.
I would guess
Now remember that.
maybe.
Okay, remember the masks that we all were wearing for a long time. Why
Oh,
were we
is
wearing
it
those
maybe
masks?
viruses because those
The
aren't actually a
viruses.
life form?
That's right. There
Okay.
you go. Good job. Good job, Charles. You're correct. You've obviously listened to me at the point. At some point, viruses are not considered alive. Even though it's so, viruses it's controversial, but the current paradigm is that viruses are not considered alive or a living form, life form. So they're not part of the official tree of life. They have a separate tree, but it's not considered part of this. Although that again is controversial. All right. So
So,
last question, or bonus question.
oh,
Go
wait,
ahead, Charlie.
wait, I want to give you a hard time a little bit about our
Sure,
work
please.
experience together. So
Oh.
for those on the call who don't, you know, didn't know Dan and I when we worked together, I am not a biologist. I learn a lot and I have a lot of biologist friends. But I was a lab manager, and so Dan was constantly educating me when we were working on, the coronavirus testing regime. He was always having to teach me these important complex or yeah, concepts. And
Yes.
I like to think that I'm a quick learner, but I definitely very much appreciated having a scientist to hold my hand through the whole thing.
And Charles, you were one. I would say you were one of the better of the business unit managers I worked with as far as learning that sort of stuff. So, but they were all very
Yeah.
good. They're all very, very good. But anyway, okay. One more bonus question here. Do you know what King Philip came over from Great Spain means? What does that mean?
Say
Have
that
you
one
heard
more
that?
time.
King Philip came over from Great Spain. Did you ever hear that when you were a kid, like in science class?
Philip came over with
From
some
Great
great
Spain.
thing. Oh,
It's a way to
yeah.
remember something.
So that's kingdom,
There you
phylum,
go.
class,
Yes. Over.
family, genus, species.
Yes, or yes, order, but yep, you got it. Kingdom, phylum, class,
Oh,
order,
I
family,
skipped order.
genus,
Sorry.
species. But yes, that's what that is, and that's the tree of life. And so I think I have one more question here. I think. Oh, shoot. Here we go. All right. So now that we said the biologist would know the most, so here we go. We're gonna drill down a little bit. All other things being equal, what type of biologist would you expect to know the most about fungi and mushroom cultivation? So here you have a zoologist, a molecular biologist, a parasitologist, a microbiologist, or a mycologist. Which of those would you think would know the most about fungi and mushroom
Well, I
cultivation?
consider myself to be a mycologist because
Yes.
I know a lot about fungi, even though I don't have the credentials to back it up.
And you are correct. The mycologist is
Mhm.
a microbiologist that specializes in the study of fungi. So that is true. And I did want to point out that, there's a many different types of microbiologists. I am a microbiologist, but I would consider myself a bacteriologist. I don't know if you can see this or not, but, you know, most practicing microbiologists are actually bacteriologists. They may not classify themselves as such. There's reasons for that, lots of reasons, but there's very, very few mycologists, true mycologists out there. Very few. And same with parasitologists. There are more virologists now because of COVID and other reasons, but when you get to the subspecialties like mycology and parasitology, there are very fewer and fewer people actually doing that. I think that's changing a little bit. I hope that's changing. But if you go to try to find a mycologist out there in the world, that's, a PhD in mycology, there just aren't that many. So
Oh,
Charles, you probably don't know as much as many. There's just not that many really experts in mycology right now in the world. So
well,
anyhow,
hopefully we change that with this new natural medicine
yeah, I
research.
mean, exactly. I think we need that. I think the fungi have a lot more to do for us besides, obviously the source of antibiotics, of course, penicillin coming from a fungus. I mean, we have so many things that we can get from the fungi, and I think there's many more things that we could if we had more people working on it. But
Yeah.
any event, all right, Charles. Well, it
Well, that was
is,
a lot of
I guess,
fun.
it's
Thanks,
three.
man.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun too, and thanks for the lab tour. It was really cool. Great catching up with you again. And I do want to get your therapist friend, and she did agree to do a thing with me, and then I just had so many other things going on. I never got the chance to arrange that, but would like to do that. And maybe I would like to meet your partner, your business partner as well. And so hopefully I can get up there to Denver at some point and actually see your place.
We'd love to show you around.
And you're welcome in Tijuana anytime, of course, as I always say.
Absolutely.
Just don't
I
bring any
usually
mushrooms because you can't bring them across the border.
can't bring them across the border with
You
me.
can, no, I don't want to lose my residency here. So, all right, Charles, anything you want to say in conclusion here?
No, that was great.
Thanks, man.
I always enjoy our conversations.
Me too, man. All right, good talking to you. We'll talk again soon. Bye, everybody. Thanks.